It begins softly, so softly you almost don't notice it. You're 7 years old, sitting cross-legged on the floor, watching a parent slowly fade out of the person you thought they were. Maybe it's the slurred words, the shaking hands, or the way their silence feels heavier than sound. And in that silence, something ancient inside you awakens. A quiet vow forms before you even have words for it. If I don't hold this together, no one will. That's the moment your childhood quietly ends. No ceremony, no warning. Just a nervous system deciding that survival matters more than innocence. You start smiling more, crying less. You memorize the moods of the room before speaking, because love now feels like something that must be earned through carefulness. You become invisible where you once wanted to be seen, and the world mistakes your vigilance for wisdom. You're so mature. You're so calm. You're such a good kid. But they don't see the cost, how every compliment is paid for with another layer of self-erasure. No one asks what it takes to be that good. Psychologists call this parentification, when a child is forced to become the parent, when you learn to soothe grown-up pain with a child's heart, when you stop needing because it feels dangerous to take up space. It doesn't just affect the mind, it reshapes the body. Your muscles tighten, your breath shortens, your heart learns to beat carefully, quietly. It's the body's way of saying, stay small, stay useful, stay safe. And what begins as coping becomes character. You grow into someone who can read danger in tone shifts, someone who can predict disappointment before it happens. This is hypervigilance. Your brain, overclocked by necessity. You start believing love is transactional. You give calmness, peace, and caretaking. And in return, maybe you'll be spared the explosion. You start to believe that being needed is the same as being loved. So you stay needed. And years later, when people call you selfless, they don't realize it's not generosity, it's conditioning. You were trained to serve as proof that chaos didn't win. But beneath the armor, something aches. That ache is not weakness, it's memory. It's the part of you that remembers what it was like to be small and terrified, watching the people meant to protect you crumble. It's the child still frozen in the corner of your psyche, clutching the idea that if they just try harder, maybe this time, it'll be enough. As you grow, that part of you never leaves. It just changes shape. It hides behind independence. It disguises itself as control. You might push people away the moment they get too close, because needing anyone feels like walking back into that old room of uncertainty. You might chase perfection, because mistakes once felt like detonations. You might struggle to feel joy because your body learned long ago that joy can be taken without warning. You may even feel numb, not because you lack emotion, but because you've carried too much of everyone else's for too long. This is the invisible face of complex trauma, the kind that never announces itself but quietly defines you. It turns self-sacrifice into identity. It turns vigilance into love. It teaches you that peace is suspicious and that softness is unsafe. And yet, when people look at you, they only see competence. They don't see the sleepless nights replaying every word you said. They don't see the guilt that appears anytime you choose yourself. They don't see how loneliness feels safer than vulnerability. Children who grew up too fast don't just fear chaos, they fear comfort. Because comfort is foreign, unpredictable, fleeting, it's easier to stay tense than to risk relaxing into something that might disappear. So why does a child choose this role? Because connection is survival. Even a broken bond feels safer than none at all. You learn to trade authenticity for attachment, truth for safety, and that bargain becomes the foundation of your identity. That's not weakness, that's intelligence. It's the most primal form of love your brain can offer. But the tragedy is this: the strategy that kept you alive is the same one that now keeps you from living. You keep performing strength, waiting for someone to notice how heavy it's become. You keep caretaking others, hoping that one day someone will return the favor. You keep trying to earn rest, not realizing rest was never supposed to be earned. But that person who's going to come save you, they're not coming, because the one who has to rescue that child is you. Healing doesn't begin with fixing, it begins with witnessing, with saying, Yes, that happened. And no, it wasn't okay. Because the moment you stop minimizing your pain, you stop abandoning yourself. The truth is, fine was never the goal. Fine is the mask that kept you functioning. Fine is the lie your nervous system told to avoid collapse. But fine is not peace. And the adults who were once that child, they don't realize how often they're still bracing. They feel unsafe in quiet rooms. They interpret kindness as manipulation. They find love and then sabotage it, because part of them believes peace must be a trick. You might be praised for being independent, but what they call independence is often self-protection dressed up as pride. And what the world calls resilience is sometimes just unprocessed grief that hasn't found permission to rest. So let's call it what it is, a pattern, a brilliant, painful, deeply human pattern that once saved you but now suffocates you. And the way out isn't pretending you're over it, it's turning toward it. Going back for the child you buried and saying, you didn't deserve to be the adult in that room. You get to rest now. This is where shadow work begins, not with positive affirmations, not with avoidance, but with honesty. By sitting beside the grief and saying, I won't leave you again. It hurts, deeply. Because healing always begins with the pain you were never allowed to feel. It's crying for birthdays that were never celebrated. It's mourning the innocence traded for safety. It's forgiving yourself for surviving the only way you knew how. But that grief isn't regression. It's resurrection. It's the sound of your body learning what peace feels like after a lifetime of chaos. The patterns won't vanish overnight. You'll still overextend, overthink, over-apologize, but slowly you begin to realize that boundaries are love, not rejection, that you can rest without guilt, that your softness is not a liability, it's your return home. Carl Jung once said, there is no coming to consciousness without pain. People will do anything to avoid meeting their own soul. But you're different. You're learning to face yours. The frightened, the angry, the tender, the unhealed, all of them. Healing isn't becoming someone new. It's remembering who you were before fear taught you who to be. So if you were the child who became the caretaker, the one who smiled through storms and held your family together with invisible thread, hear this. Your strength was never the problem. Your silence was never weakness. You did what you had to do. But now you can choose something else. You can choose rest over responsibility, truth over composure, softness over survival. And on the days when you feel like that child again, that's okay. That's not a step backward. That's the return. Let them cry. Let them laugh. Let them exist. Because you're not broken. You're coming home to yourself. You may not have had a childhood, but you still have a future. And this time you get to grow at your own pace. You get to be free.